Alrighty, well, welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. We really have enjoyed being part of this journey, our continuing journey. With film just being able to have its own legs and to be able to participate with everybody during this strange time on Mother Earth. How do we go forward? How do we move through this period of time? Even still living at home in the same situation. It's so different. It is so different just in our communication. So Clement, how do you see us participating together today?
So there is Joel from the Brooklyn Library. He's the one organizing the events, and he should be the one monitoring the discussion, but he tells me that he never received the Zoom link that you actually received yourself. Okay, that's okay. So we will just be the ones with video and not himself. So that's Joel, you're here.
So he's our host today.
That's it.
Hi, I'm back verbally.
Yes, you're back.
I'm a giant white pair of words on a black screen. But I really enjoyed the film. It's so nice to speak with you both, and to any audience members who can see the chat window. I have plenty of questions myself for both of you, but for the audience members who must have loved the film as much as I did, please put questions in the chat and I'll ask some of yours, but then maybe, I don't know if we'll just go over to you at the end anyway. I am hosting, not really hosting, but normally we would do this event at our space here at the Brooklyn Public Library near Grand Army Plaza, which is very much activated with a lot of marches and protests about Black Lives Matter. We've been reminding ourselves and reminding those who come to our events most of the time in person and now lately online that this is Lenape Hoking. This is not Brooklyn except by acts of history from colonization. And actually the series that were under the auspices under which we do these Green Series events has a lot to do with an oil spill here in Brooklyn and mitigation money and the creation of a totally LEED certified green branch, environmentally sustainable branch in North Brooklyn, which was scheduled to come online this spring. And I imagine that will still happen. And the Green Series of speakers, we're always honored when people have been working on these questions so long and doing such great work. So just to get right into it, welcome to you both. Welcome to one and all. Casey Camp Horinek, I believe you said your name is Zuthi. Is that right?
Judy.
You said something really amazing in the film about how we're all downstream in one form or another, and it was really amazing to me to watch the work that you were doing. In this moment that we're in, I just wonder, can you just talk kind of from the general to the specific about what is the problem with these pipelines?
Oh, is that all?
I'd like to start with a very simple question.
Oh, yeah.
Everything.
Thank you. Well, first, it's wonderful to be here. It's always an honor to share talk and thoughts and prayer with folks that kind of are trying to align themselves with the natural laws. And to be very brief, I guess that would be the problem with them, is they are not aligned with the natural law. When one draws oil and gas and other what they call resources from the body of the Mother Earth. It would be very much like imagine the human body, and someone reaches inside the human body and extracts the lubricants from the body, extracts something that is part of the living being that Creator has put in place so that all things function, and then uses that as a resource. It's kind of like a Frankenstein experiment, if you will. And so if one looks at it differently and looks at it as an economic boon to the upper 1% or even the upper 5%, and then looks at the expense the rest of us are paying for, then we're talking about possible oil spills that are there. We're talking about the air, the Father's sky being so polluted that we are unable to breathe and our children are unable to breathe. If we talk about the possibility of ruptures of those pipelines going into the water, we do not exist without water. It seems very clear and simple to me that it is very much time and very overdue for humans to realize that we have to transition away from that and teach anyone who doesn't understand that there are renewable energies. We don't have to continue to follow this path of destruction, this path of the extractive industry or economics being one that is the only path forward. It is the only path to destruction. So I find, like in Oklahoma, where I live, in north central Oklahoma, there was a period of 6 years where a lot of fracking was taking place here. We had literally, and I'm not exaggerating, over 10,000 earthquakes, man-made earthquakes, up to a 5.8. That's unnatural. That's unacceptable. That's dangerous, not just on the physical level, but it's dangerous to your psyche, to your spirit, to live on edge all the time and to wonder what's coming next. And we're kind of in that position in relationship to, we looked at what happened with COVID-19 when the carbon in the air dropped 17% because we're all staying home and not expending gas and oil. And we saw the air clearing, the water clearing, the food growing better. We started to garden. We started to reacquaint ourselves with our own families and be in our own homes and see a different way forward. So maybe that's a tiny answer.
Yeah, that's the start of an answer. I know that the film does a great job of showing the importance of allies and groups and indigenous folks and people interested in indigenous issues, all working together and trying to reframe it as kind of a human issue, but also just a natural issue and a species issue and a survival issue. Along the same lines with these protests in honor of George Floyd, we heard once again a Black American saying, "I can't breathe," and some Black Lives Matter activists have tied that to the fact that the COVID-19 attacks its victims, largely people of color, disproportionately, including the hardest hit group, I think, was the Navajo land, because of these pre-existing conditions of history and of colonization. We all can't breathe. And I know that was an important line in the film. This is one of the effects of these spills. There's just this terrible stench that you see again and again in the film. For instance, when Melina is first brought this mud from the Amazon area that she visits, Talk a little bit in the interest of sort of that same framing. How do these spills and other problems of the oil era, oil and gas era, disproportionately affect indigenous and other people of color? And why is that? If
Certainly. I think that you're, again, we can scratch the surface of that question. Yeah, you know, the United States of America is a colonist mindset that came to these lands with the idea of rape, pillaging, stealing, and creating a paradise for themselves. And in order to do that, then they had to find a place to do the dirty work. And I'm talking in big generalities here. I understand that all humans are different, and certainly many have beautiful minds and spirits. I'm talking about the society that was here, and then we'll move into other areas as well. But for the indigenous people, we continued to be moved further and further and further away from our homelands. And the territory that was left to us, as it were, for the Pinka, happened to be in an area with oil and gas underneath. So for them, the American society, to be able to live in the manner they wanted to, they had to start exploiting that. And that leaves a mess. That leaves a minefield of pollution in various ways that we could talk about as we move through this. So I'm going to stay with the Ponca people, my people, for a moment here. We live in north central Oklahoma. We have a large refinery here at Phillips 66 Conoco, and this is, of course, chronicled in Condor and the Eagle. But where this is located is in the heart of Ponca country, and with our Black and brown relatives and poor white people that live near the refinery. Any of those who own that, any of those who work in executive positions, live far, far away from the actual pollution itself. And so our bodies are already affected by the fact that we were forcibly removed from our homes. We were given substandard food because they took our hunting instruments and our farming instruments. So our bodies developed diabetes. And so on top of the diabetes, we now are dealing with cardiovascular problems. We're dealing with autoimmune problems in our body. We're dealing with cancers in rampant numbers. And then when you add an illness like COVID-19, it is very similar as to when the United States government introduced smallpox blankets into our territory when we lived along the Missouri. Just as with every other human who has no resistance to COVID-19, we had no resistance to the smallpox. So fast forward to today, same situation, only our bodies are much more compromised than they were then. And the healthcare is non-existent here. You know, within the Native American community, part of our treaty rights was for healthcare. But within our relatives that are the Black relatives and the brown relatives, then they don't have that. There is no health care for them, and they're dealing with the exact same health care as we have. There was a rally here yesterday in Ponca City where I spoke at the Black Lives Matter rally, and we were talking there about the fact that I can't breathe. is a reality on the south end of Ponca City. They cannot breathe because of ConocoPhillips, because of Phillips 66 refinery and what they're putting in the air. They're being suffocated in that manner as well. The idea that they don't have healthcare at all also creates a situation because we live in multi-generational family units, and the folks that live with grandma and grandpa, we're losing all of our wisdom keepers, not just the indigenous people, but the people that have suffered through slavery and economic slavery, and the kind of I guess it's virtually in every area, not being able to get the proper education, if indeed that education is something we want, because it's skewed as well. History is created by the victors, right?
Yeah.
So do they tell our history? This is a complex question that is also just at its root totally simple. Decolonization, recognition and respect. You know, those are things that we all need.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to have some more questions for you shortly, Casey. I was just speaking with Clement as we were getting ready for this, and Clement, you said you did this amazing process of starting the film through on-location shorts among many, many indigenous groups. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit, tell the audience a little bit about how The Condor and the Eagle grew out of those shorter films.
Yes, thank you. I think that The Condor and the Eagle grew up from our realization that we were very mature in our lives, mostly. That we were really not ready to have kids and to become good parents. That's why, you know, instead of going and buy a house or, you know, like get a better paid job, what we did was just take our savings and traveled across the ocean in order to learn and to maybe better listen to what life had to tell us. At the time, we didn't have any clear idea about what we wanted to do. We just had a DSLR camera, you know, like a photography camera that could actually film, you know, like videos. And we just wanted to make like a short piece on environmental issues. We didn't know what, we didn't know where, we didn't know how, because we have never done a film before. But we were motivated. And actually we had just made it to the US for 2 weeks when we heard that there was this amazing event taking place, the Cowboys and Indians Alliance. And we're pretty uneducated about how indigenous people have actually led the way about environmental justice, but about like the right balanced way to live on this planet for thousands of years. And they are still leading the environmental justice movement through the spiritual bond and connection to the oneness of life. And we saw Casey Kemp Horinek here step on the stage, and I don't know. That's just with her. Didn't happen with the other protagonists or other people. But when I saw her, I said to my wife Sophie, with whom we co-directed the film, it's like, we will work with her. She said, yeah. Sophie said, it's never going to work out. And it didn't work out, actually, until a few months after. So what we did was understand that beyond science, beyond anger, victimhood, there was a much deeper and important cultural aspect to taking a stand for what we love and for what we are. We are nature defending itself, and so we hit the road and decided to learn more from indigenous communities. So we were having this very small van, so very, very small. And we traveled all across the US, all the way up to northern Canada. And we stopped from one community to the next and listened deeply to what people had to tell us. And so we started educating ourselves and understand that, you know, beyond having a physical journey, we had as well an inner journey. It was just the beginning, but that became apparent that, you know, our film would be more about engaging on a spiritual level the audience more than just lecturing the audience again about what's wrong about the world. And so from one community to the next, we filmed or produced a short video in order to support their work, their struggle, their resistance. And we showed to the communities the videos we did. We took their feedbacks. And after a while, we understood there was a bigger story to be told. And that was the beginning of the Condor and Eagle.
Cool. You both now have mentioned this in the film. You call it Casey, the new CIA. Can you tell me a little bit about how this alliance came about?
Yeah, there was a cowboy and Indian alliance sometime in the past, and I wasn't aware of that. But our homelands, the Ponca people, are from Nebraska, or now called Nebraska. Ni is water, Nebraska is flat, and that was one of the places that our people lived. The Keystone XL pipeline, which was then under the auspice of TransCanada and now changed their name to TC Energy, has plans on coming through there from the tar sands all the way down to the Montana and the Dakotas and Alaska and down to Oklahoma to Houston and then to the open market. And we decided that, and actually, we're not going to let that happen. That will not happen. Whether it's bodies on the line or hopefully through legal channels, we'll make sure that doesn't happen, because that is the largest carbon bomb there could possibly be, and life as humans know it will be drastically changed from now on. Humans are so silly, you know, just silly. Anyway, I was working with some beautiful people. Faith Spotted Eagle had talked to myself and my son Mikasi and Jeff, who Kluma had met at that Cowboy and Indian Alliance event. And we decided that we would reenact or enact a dormant treaty that was created in 1854 between the Yankton and the Ponca. And since it had never been abrogated by us, that we would call it into play so that we could protect that territory up there, as well as trying to reach out and make friends and allies out of the ranchers and farmers who are now the caretakers of the sacred territory that Wakanda had placed us on. And it was very prickly, very uncomfortable for all of us. Those of us, like, my grandfather was on that forestry people at the age of 8. My mother was the first born in captivity, first generation born in captivity on a reservation, which in reality is a POW camp. Our memories, our cellular blood memories, come from that territory, and we're very attached still yet So take friends with those ranchers and farmers who are now the caretaker, and they say, oh, we've been here a couple of generations now, and you all don't understand what eminent domain means. And we're like, wait a minute, eminent domain? Yeah, we get it. It is uncomfortable, but we did it anyway for love of the land, the air, the water, our mother, the earth, our father, the sky, and our combined resistance to killing it. And it's carried forward. We continue to have that relationship now. We do go up there, and my son has a sacred corn planting up there in the territory. We still have that love and regard for one another. So it's kind of how that came about.
Mm-hmm. And the allyship between and among women is also, I know, important to your work. Can you tell listeners a little bit more about what the status is of the Indigenous Women's Treaty and what plans are for that going forward, and briefly how that came about?
First, I want to say that I'm very grateful for your acknowledgement of living on Lenape territory. Creator, Mother Earth, humans and all that we're connected to, gave us an understanding, however that happens. I certainly don't have that manner in which to communicate to you how that happened, that it was for us to build this, recreate the old ways of support with one another. And how in this day and age, how we women could share with one another the knowledge that are being brought to us, either directly from the earth herself, the water herself, the air itself, and the winds that blow, the thunders, the relative four legs. I could go on. But also in a very concrete way of saying, you know, you are in the Amazon and you're experiencing these things my people experienced 75 to 100 years ago. This is what's going to happen next. First, they'll come to you with this thought. Then they'll come to you with that thought. Then they'll narrow it down to an individual that maybe doesn't understand the situation. My people didn't know what money meant at all, or ownership of land. And then the next thing you know, you're going to be in the situation that the Ponkas are right now. We knew that we wanted to support Melina and her people and many others in the tar sands territory. We understood this concept of carbon trading as just a bizarre human thought to trade air. You know, we understood that water is life, and as Clement was saying, we understood that we're not defending nature. We are nature defending itself. And so a treaty came that was an understanding that had, first of all, there's never been treaties between indigenous people. We communicated in a different way than a piece of paper, but also we wanted this very tangible thing that we could say, this is how our prayers are going to be directed. So Pinnacle Plant, many others, I'm going to not even name all the names, were directed to this territory that is Lenape territory during a red moon. It was an eclipse. And it was a time, it was a power shift within the universal time of how women would begin to rebuild our own understanding of what is the feminine portion of the universe and how out of balance it's been for the last several hundred years. Maybe it might even be 2020 years, you know,
Yeah.
that had been shifted. And that in order to get us all back in balance, the female energy, the feminine energy, had to assert itself in a loving manner. And that brought many of us together from the south and the north, and now has reached to the east and west as well. And it's a good moment. And they, a Lenape relative of ours, and I, you know, we speak of relatives in terms of just feeling related and acknowledging relationship, took us to a sacred place of her peoples because we knew we needed to be there. And it was so funny later to realize that it was Central Park. There were certain rocks there that she knew had to be part of this ceremony. And yeah, so that's where we ended up being.
You know, a long time ago I was reading something about the creation of the word genocide by I think a Polish scholar and Jew named Raphael Lemkin. And I think in the original genocide convention that he was trying to push through the UN, he was trying to include political affiliation among the groups, that if you killed people for their political affiliation, that should be considered genocide. And what occurred to me during the film, and it has occurred to me before reading other environmentalists, what the challenge seems to be is to put nature, to put the environment on the same standing as humans and of course corporations, so that I mean, it's just really inspiring to hear you say that we are nature defending itself, because that is what it's about. It's about survival. And you say that a few times very eloquently in the film. There's a moment where you say, if you've forgotten this, please remember it. You are nature. But in terms of these resolutions and other, it sounds like there's a push that you seem central to enact that. And if that's the case, what can you tell the audience and me about A, where that stands, and how it's spreading, and B, I'm sure everyone here wants to know how we can help spread that idea further.
It's not an idea. First, we should just you know, humans are kind of slow to catch on.
Yeah.
Thank you. Among the Ponca people, when I was on the council, which I've retired from, we passed a resolution which is creating a statute. We are a sovereign people, or as my brother Carter told, we're as sovereign as they allow us to be. Theoretically, we're sovereign. And because we are experiencing genocide, environmental genocide, literally being killed by Phillips 66 practices in our territory, we were looking for a way to be able to protect all things, because we are interdependent. We eat, we drink, we breathe, and all of those things that are part of that act of creating this human body need to be protected even more than humans, because humans are the problem. So I had attended a gathering with 100 women from around the globe that Osprey Oriel Lake with Women's Earth and Climate Action Network put together, and I met Shannon Biggs, who I now work with her and Penny through Movement Rights. And she had been working with a group called the Global Alliance on the Rights of Nature, and talking about making laws to again recognize that all things are living. And I'm like, yeah, of course. This is an innate understanding for us, but I wasn't comfortable with the idea of creating a law around it. We've had some pretty bad things happen in the indigenous world with these laws, including this one that they call Freedom of Religion Act for Native Americans, because it's like, if we have freedom of religion, why are you creating a law about it? Isn't that another one of those inalienable rights, which we haven't had, by the way. Over a period of years, I learned to listen to others and see how it was working for them. And eventually we came to a point in the Ponca Nation where we did create a statute that if we have someone that is violating rights of nature, someone who is dumping into the river and killing the water, someone who has attacked a species through pollution, that we would have an entity as kind of a guardian, the human guardian that could speak human to human in terms of law, and bring those polluters or those violators into our court, into the Ponca court. So far, theory. We have those things in place, we just haven't put them to practice yet. However, around the globe, many, many other indigenous people, as well as communities of people, are beginning to do the same thing, recognizing that all life has a right to exist. And if it has a right to exist, how are we going to, as you say, recognize the same rights as a corporation might have, and sue on behalf of Berry Bush or the Wanganui River in New Zealand, or Lake Erie, or any of those others? There are municipalities in California that have rights of nature. How do you do it? You do it just the same as I did. You all live in a land of laws, a land of policy, a land of if this law isn't working well, let's tweak it and create something that will stand into a court of law. You can do that. You do that in your city commissions and your county elections. You can find people who have that understanding that if we eat, breathe, and drink, it's simple to say that whatever gives these bodies life is indeed alive itself. I mean, science is beginning to catch up with us in those terms of what is a sentient being and what does that mean, theoretically. It's a fun thought to even look at that, but it's a reality.
There's a few audience members' questions. Before I ask the first one, is there a story behind that beautiful tapestry behind you?
Just very personal. This was my son Mikasi has a newborn that's about now a year and 3 months old. His name is Tenuga, Buffalo Bull, and he's named for my great-grandfather, Tenuga Nikagahi, which is Buffalo Bull chief. And so we know that we came from the stars. The Star Nation is part of us, and then it's actually feeding a lot of information into today. And so this star quilt is in a war bonnet as well. And so it's in honor of my great grandfather, Tenuga Nikagahi, as well as my grandson, Tenuga, as well as recognizing our relationship to the stars.
Cool. And congratulations on the new family member. The audience question that I saw first was, when traveling and uniting Indigenous women leaders, was there any experience that really stood out as being especially memorable?
10,000. I'm going through my memory and trying to think of just one.
Yeah.
And of course, that experience in the original treaty signing stands out. Being in the Amazon with many of my friends, sister friends, stands out. Being at a place with the Sami people, because I'm so used to indigenous people being considered like myself, brown people, you know, and to meet with Sami, who still have their original ways, the keepers of the reindeer. Yeah. And they look like white folks. That kind of surprised me, and it was very beautiful to be part of that. To listen to the voice of our indigenous women that are youth. You know, my granddaughter travels with me a great deal. And to hear the wisdom in those, yeah, it's very difficult to pick one or two or 20.
Yeah, I totally hear you. I guess there must be some other activists in our audience. Oh, you got one.
I thought of one.
Okay, good.
Oh, yeah. Okay, can't help. Sorry for interrupting.
No, that's fine.
Okay, we were in Paris, and we were at the United Nations gathering there, and we do water ceremonies wherever we are. We bring water from our homeland, we combine them, we offer it back to the whatever body of water is nearby, and it's deep, it's very powerful. So we were looking around in Paris, where does one find that space for ceremony near the Eiffel Tower? You can imagine, full of tourists and busy and lights and everything. We found ourselves under a bridge by the river that comes through there. And women began to offer songs from their homeland. So women from the north, and I'm not going to give names now because that would be a little violation to me. I offered a water song myself and said, is there other people who want to offer one? And one from up by the Arctic Circle offered a song of the whales. And it was deep and powerful and beautiful and rhythmic. One from the deserts of Africa had a song that came from the winds that go across the desert. A woman from the Sami nation sang a song of ice, and you could hear the ice tinkling in her song. Women from the islands sang songs from the oceans that came. So yes, maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. Because we were singing songs that our Mother, the Earth, and the winds had taught us. Yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me of John Powell. John Powell, the activist and scholar and lawyer, law professor at UC Berkeley, was saying that his father was talking about the civil rights era and how some of the racist police, like people working for Bull Connor and I think Birmingham, if the activists started to sing gospels or spirituals or their traditional songs from around, history. Somehow, if the songs reminded the police or the people who were, traditionally often beating them up, it would connect them to the activist humanity, and a lot of times the singing would make the beating stop, is how John Powell put it. So that's what, just the way that music can connect us almost instantly to the whole of the emotional life and the connection that we feel. So there must be an activist among us, because one of I think the other question that came in from the audience is just kind of a coincidental restatement of something I asked you. And it's something that Melina asks her Ecuadorian colleagues in the film. I'll word it how the audience member did, and I think it's important to frame it too, because those of us who are interested in being allies have to stop asking people who've already done the work to keep doing the work for us by teaching us what you've learned. And so we have to put in some effort ourselves. But I don't know anything about this questioner. How can we help? Because you are right, we are all affected by these corporations' misdeeds with the cooperation that they have with our governments. Yeah, that's what the questioner is saying.
What do you want? I guess, how can you help? What is it that you want? Do you want to do you want to drink water? You have to learn to protect the water, Do you want to breathe? These are not questions that I'm going to say, look, I have a foundation or I have an organization, and you should support those.
Right.
My son has an organization. It's called Earth Rights. Should you want to do that, there are youth training camps that happen there. But I feel that each of us has to take a personal responsibility for our actions. And those acts have to include, people exercise because they want their heart to be strong and their muscles to carry them and the cardiovascular system to be good. So what does one do on a larger scale? We share one true mother, you and I, and all that is. And that's our mother, the earth. So should you work hard on your own body? Absolutely. But what about the body of the one who nurtures and cares for us? What are you doing within the policies of your community? How are you making sure that you are moving yourself as well as your community away from fossil fuel energies and into renewable? It takes a conscious choice for each and every one of us. I was in, I think, the northwest port of the United States. I know what nation I was visiting, but I'm trying to put it in your context. And I had a indigenous woman tell me, non-indigenous, pardon me, say, look, you go set up the camp to stop them from putting this dam in. I'll come support you. And I told her, you do it. You set up the camp. I'll come support you. And we're that way right now. Mm-hmm. We all have to set up the camp and support whatever it is that will stop what is going on right now, or where the lemmings just get ready to jump off the cliff.
That's right. Well, if my video had worked, you'd have seen me nodding pretty consistently throughout most of everything that you both said. One of these days we'll be doing conversations like this in person again. And I just want you to know, Casey and Clement, both of you, that you have an open invitation to come to our stage at Brooklyn Public Library and speak. And certainly if there's a chance to show the film again, or to have either of you come to any of our series. We're doing a series now that's almost winding down called the 28th Amendment, where we're engaging town halls. Oh, my Siri is talking to me. We're engaging town halls initially around Brooklyn, and now folks around the country, just to ask, and again, maybe this is a shortcut, but it's for the sake of the conversations that we've generated. What can we do to fix this broken system? And we've gotten really amazing audiences to speak to us and to give us ideas. Each one of the 30 or so that we've done has had note takers, and then we're planning to compile them, and then we're hoping to publish the final edited down version as our framers read through them, our quote unquote framers, in a sort of a cheeky revisitation of this. But I know that a lot of what we've been talking about, Casey, precedes the Constitution. Those treaties precede the Constitution that are the basis of the supposed relationship between the United States and Indigenous people. And I really, really honor your perspective and the work that you've done. And I hear you. We all have to go make the camp. Clement, Casey, thank you again for joining us. To those of you who sent in questions, thank you so much. And
thank you.
Look forward to next time we can all converse together.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Casey. Thank
Clement,
you, everybody.
do you have any final thought for the group, Clement?
No, I'm always very amused because in every discussion we have, there's always someone asking, "How can I help?"
Yeah.
You know, I think there's no easy fix. There is no easy way. First, we need to face our own darkness, you know, and sit with it. So we understand that first we clean ourselves so that we can clean the environment. You know, the environment is just a reflect of the mess we have made with ourselves. So take responsibility, as Casey said. But of course, we can always, you know, make a campment. But first, you know, we have to inhabit our own soul and camp within. You know, that would be a good first step. That's all what I have to say.
Cool. Well, congratulations to you both again, and thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.